AFL Fantasy Football League. What's going on? It's your guys, Josh, Stokes, and Magic, and we have a special surprise for you. And actually, we have to credit the champ, Magic. It was his idea. He's been telling us for weeks we need to do a podcast about the Dynasty League. Now, Stokes, I find it a little sus, as my daughter would say, that the guy who won the championship all of a sudden wants to have a podcast to talk about it. Like, I would never have such shame to have a podcast to talk about how great I was at a certain accomplishment on a fake football thing. But as we are, what do you think about this idea, Stokes? Are you excited?
I mean, I was a little apprehensive because I lost the championship, but of course, I mean,
that's right.
got to be here from my boy.
So we have the two guys who were in the championship and the guy who I think was like the 9th seed. So good mix of talent on this show.
That's right.
All right, Magic. So how does it feel to be number one?
It's about everything that I hoped it would be. I've been using all the money that I collected from you guys. It's been wonderful. I've just taken a bath in it like a Scrooge McDuck. Converted it all to pennies. It's not really safe, but it's fun.
Yeah.
I mean, I went in. Well, I don't know. Do you have a rundown for this?
Yeah, I mean, it's all up here. It's all Magic. This is what I do. This is what I do. I probably should have given you guys a rundown. I didn't even think about that, but we're going to kind of wing it a little bit tonight. Did you get enough money to pay for a wedding?
No.
Okay, just it's hypothetical. Like, did you get enough to pay for a car? I'm just throwing random things out there that have nothing to do with either of you.
No.
There are, yeah.
Or a house, or
she's awake, so.
Oh! Speaking of money.
Oops.
Speaking of money, transition as he panics. I want to reiterate, nobody owes any league dues this year because when we started this up, what is this? We're going into year 3, right? 3 years ago, everybody paid 2 seasons ahead, and then I just kind of decided that's silly. We know these guys; these are AFL guys, and even if we have to replace somebody along the way, we should be fine. Nobody's team, besides JD, his team is in such a bad shape that we have to really worry about. What is it? The term Stokes orphan team? I think that's probably a little inappropriate these days. But can we still say fantasy owners? Is it managers? What's the lingo?
I think managers is the correct term because players don't want to feel like they're owned.
Yeah. Okay, so don't say Redskins, don't say owners, and don't say orphans.
Wait, what's wrong with orphans?
I don't know. I feel like somebody's got to be upset about it.
Sure.
Maybe those little orphan kids.
All right, guys. So here's what our loose rundown is on this show is we're all just kind of going to kick around because for me, this is my second Dynasty League that I've ever been in. And Stokes, I think you've been in, I know you do NBA. You guys both do NBA Dynasty, but Stokes, is this your first Dynasty League?
So I've done keeper leagues, but never, I hadn't done a dynasty. I've done dynasty baseball and basketball, but this is my first dynasty for football.
And then Magic, this is your first NFL Dynasty League?
This is my first NFL Dynasty League, and I'm in the same Dynasty Basketball League with Stokes that I also won.
So oh, my God. Get out of here.
Let's go.
Wow. I mean, we should just leave, Stokes. And drop the knowledge on us.
Yeah.
What we're thinking for tonight is we're just going to kind of go around the room, the virtual room here, and just talk about lessons learned if we could do it all over again. I mean, Magic's list is probably going to be shorter than ours because he did win the championship, but obviously there are lessons you learn along the way. There's ways you value people when you're not used to the dynasty format. And we're going to be open and honest about this. We all talked about it. Like, yes, there is some strategy in us, not just saying what our plans are for this season all the way, but we're going to try to make this interesting. And then we are going to go through a fun list that Magic had us vote on before this previous season, where we all anonymously voted on things like, who do we think has the best team? Who's going to have the best team next year? What player do you wish you would have? Magic has some fun results from that. And then we are going to go into the Sleeper app and go team by team and just kind of give a brief outlook on all those teams. It's going to be fun. Don't take any of it serious. This is just a fun fantasy league that we're all enjoying. Hopefully you can enjoy this show for however long it goes. I think we're aiming for like 30, 40 minutes, which means by the time you're watching this, there's probably a clock down there that says 2.5 hours because you know how we do. But all right, Stokes, I'll start with you because you did lose the championship game.
Oh my God.
The dynasty format, the dynasty strategy, is there anything that sticks out in your brain that if you could either do it all over again or go back 2 years and tell the 2020 version of yourself, what is that lesson you think you've learned?
I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is Michael Thomas. I went into that first draft thinking, okay, well, I mean, this guy, for the last 4 or 5 years, he's been like at worst like wide receiver 2 or 3 when it comes to fantasy, and I thought that he was dealing with an injury that he had already dealt with, and then going into the next year, he'd be okay. So I thought I was getting really good value, and I think it was the 4th or 5th round turn that I got him, and I thought that was great value. Here we are, 2 seasons later. He's played like 2 games for me, and I definitely would have gone a different route. And when I look at it, like Debo Samuel was taken like 10, 11 picks later, and just that difference in those 2 players. I mean, I don't know whether or how it would have changed the way I built my team after that, but it was that's the big thing that sticks out with me.
How about you, Magic? You obviously won the whole thing this year, but do you have anything that you've learned about Dynasty that maybe you wish you would have known beforehand?
What I didn't account on beforehand was the value of future draft picks. So Stokes is in the kind of Ram situation of F them picks. And I mean, we're giving him a hard time, but I mean, he made the finals.
Yeah.
He just, ran into a buzzsaw. That's not his fault. But I mean, going into the draft, I planned I hope I win within the first 3 years and I'll figure it out after that. So, like, I took Travis Kelce with my second pick. Looking back, I mean, it's worked out because he's maintained that kind of level of production, but that's not really something you should be counting on. So I think the big thing that I don't want to give credit is that Costa went young, and it seems like his team could be good for as long as this league lasts.
Yeah. I think that's a great point. And on draft night or draft night, it was like draft week. We were all, poking fun at Costa because it was like young guy, young guy, young guy. And I think there's 2 different ways you can look at this. One, I do think there is a sound strategy in aiming for players that are 25 and under and maybe even younger at the running back position. But Costa also did luck out in the sense that we started after a very good draft class. Like you're talking about Chase, Waddle, Pitts, all in that draft class, all players who are going to be foundation players, you would think, for the next 10 years. Whereas, like, if we would have started up this year, I mean, people are talking about Jackson Smith and Jigba, but nobody's talking about him like he's on the level of those players. So I think there is some luck in there. I think the one lesson I wish I could go back and redo, I would have prioritized quarterback a little more. And I think I was using my season-long strategy of, there's only 14 of us. I should be just fine if I get a Kirk Cousins or a Ryan Tannehill, as long as my team is solid. But really, you have to think about these running backs. Their windows of being great tend to be like 2 or 3 years max. And then unless they're elite, like the McCaffreys who just don't come around very often, these receivers, they have a lot longer runway. And then like Josh Allen, who's on your team, Stokes, he should be your quarterback for the next 10 years. And you should just think that for the next 10 years, you're going to have an advantage over almost every team you play against at quarterback. While I drafted Saquon Barkley in the first round, he's already off my team. I swapped him out for Travis Etienne. I also, I trade up this year and got Gibbs from Detroit. But, there's a good chance that the running back I drafted this year, who's a rookie, might be out of the league when Josh Allen is still playing. So looking at it that way, I think I would have not only prioritized a little bit more youth. There was a DeAndre Hopkins over DJ Moore pick that I had there that I still kind of kick myself about. But I think I would have prioritized the positions that have more longevity. I don't know if that stands out to you at all, Stokes. You didn't go quarterback super early, did you? You traded for Allen.
Yeah, I drafted Herbert in a couple rounds after I drafted Michael Thomas. But yeah, it's really difficult when you think when you're doing season long, you want to get the advantage at running back, and when you're thinking about dynasty, it is like from 1 year to the next, you just have no idea what to expect with running backs. Like there are still guys that are still good and still working it out, like Christian McCaffrey, Austin Eckler, Derrick Henry, those types of guys who are still building block number one type running backs. But you've got a guy like Zeke Elliott, Dalvin Cook. Both of those guys are on my team that I went into last year I traded for him because like if they give me RB1 type value, then great. Then after that, I have to deal with the ramifications of it. And now I am dealing with because neither one of them have a job currently. So like that initial draft is just something that it's really difficult to prepare for. And yeah, with wide receivers, people who have a lot of good wide receivers, like they're going to be good into their late 20s and into their low 30s. And that's just not the case for running back. And when you look at the last year that we had the rookie draft, there was a 5th round pick that or 4th round pick that was making noise for a team. So it's just really a crapshoot.
It is. It's tricky. I wish I could pull up the draft results on Sleeper, but when we advance it forward, oh, you have the draft results?
I have the draft, and I'm just kind of looking at rounds 1 and 2 to kind of prove the point. Receivers that went in rounds 1: Justin Jefferson, DK Metcalf, Tyreek Hill. On the turn in round 2, AJ Brown, Stephon Diggs, Devontae Adams, Calvin Ridley, CeeDee Lamb, and Jamar Chase. All of those, well, I mean, Calvin Ridley we lost for gambling.
Yeah,
but
reasons you couldn't foresee. Yeah,
right. Everyone has produced.
Mm-hmm.
The first 7 picks were running backs. Christian McCaffrey, he was great last year. I had him for half of year 1. Jonathan Taylor, he was great year 1. Didn't have him last year. Derrick Henry, great year 1. We missed him for part of last year. Nick Chubb, great. Dalvin Cook, jobless. Saquon Barkley, he's off your team.
Missed year 1, good last year.
Alvin Kamara, he was bad last year and okay the first year.
Mm-hmm.
Najee Harris was picked 10. Zeke Elliott, jobless. Aaron Jones, that's round 1. Where you're like, all right, this is going to be my foundation. Antonio Gibson was Stokes' second pick after Tyreek Hill. So he was 50% on his first 2 picks. Oh my God, J.K. Dobbins was next. DeAndre Swift was next. David Montgomery.
Yeah. And when RVD he had Najee Harris and DeAndre Swift, we were like, man, RVD's set for life at running back because Najee Harris, he didn't have a great rookie year by NFL standards, but he had a great rookie year by fantasy standards because Ben Roethlisberger was at the point of his career where all he was doing was throwing 3-yard passes to the running back and then eventually would throw it to Deontay Johnson deep here and there. But now look at it, and DeAndre Swift is on the Eagles. They're hoping he catches lightning in a bottle there. And, Najee Harris is kind of just a guy at this point, maybe somewhat of a volume play. I'll tell you another thing that I like what Magic did this offseason. It's something I've learned in my other league, and this is kind of 2 different points. So the thing Magic did that I like, I'm going to set aside for a second. But in my other league, the guy that had Todd Gurley was just a dominant year 1. Those years he was just great with the Rams, but he just kept him on his team, never traded out. And now he had this stock that was as high as it could be. And now it's a dead stock. He's still on his roster. He refuses to release the guy. He's just holding on. And, I think part of the trick with these running backs particularly is understanding when these age cliffs tend to be like there's going to be guys like Derrick Henry who are 29 and kind of buck the trend. Tom Brady played into his 40s, but understanding like when the historical age cliffs are and selling out of that. And I talked to a bunch about my other league. In my other league, I had Nick Chubb, Saquon Barkley, and Christian McCaffrey all in that 26, 25 age range, all coming up on that point when you're like, are they going to hit the wall and I'm going to lose a stock? So I actually traded Nick Chubb this offseason for Garrett Wilson. I think being okay with taking a loss on a trade to know that it might sting now, but it's better than winding up with nothing in your hands when that running back all of a sudden hits a wall is super important. And, all these lessons that we've learned early on, we've all made mistakes. I think JD probably learned a pretty tough lesson with his Cortland Sutton for the first pick thing. He didn't know he was going to get the first pick. But before I go on to my thing that I like what Magic did, I don't know, Stokes, you're the running back guy, obviously from Madden and from your own personal life. But I think maybe the larger point is we love these players. We love our team, but it's almost like you got to know when to hold them and know when to fold them, and getting out of a player while he's still like this before he starts doing this is almost like the key to this whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And trying to figure out how you value that player when you're trying to trade them and trade for them, because if you have the running back that you're trying to get out of, everyone that you talk with is probably going to downgrade what they're going to give you because well, he's 27 years old. Like I'm not gonna get the production he got for you. So I mean, why should I pay wide receiver one price when I'm getting an RB1 that I'm only going to get a year or two out of, and then just you have to. It's definitely one of those situations where you have to, in your mind, understand that you're not going to get solid value today, but in 1 year from now, 2 years from now, the value is going to be great. When you still have a commodity and the other guy has a running back who is fighting for a job or is coming off an injury, and that's how you have to really look at it, and that's tough when you're the guy that has the running back, but it makes it easier sometimes when you're the guy that doesn't have the running back because it doesn't cost you as much, but you deal with the consequences afterwards.
Now, Magic, this isn't the thing that I like that you did. I do like this also, but last offseason, you took a gamble by trading a first for what people would perceive as an aging running back in Austin Eckler. But you looked at your team, you saw your team clearly had a window to win. You have Christian McCaffrey, and it ended up putting your team over the hump, and you won the championship. That was certainly the right time to strike for one of those running backs. But now you are in that situation where you have running backs who aren't necessarily aging, and the way they play, those two should age fairly well compared to someone like a Nick Chubb and a Henry. Have you given any thought to like, okay, my team's great right now, but I got to make sure I get out of Kelsey before he does this. So I got to make sure I get out of McCaffrey before he starts doing this. Or at this point in time, are you just going to kind of ride this window you're in and then figure it out whenever this team starts to derail a little bit?
I've mostly thought about it with CMC and Eckler. I don't think anyone's giving up anything for Kelsey, and that's fine. He can die on my team. He can move to the front office in Kansas City, and I'll keep him on the roster. But so we've got Eckler, who's like unhappy with his contract. He started holding out. I was like, well, I can't trade him now. This is as low as he's going to be. Christian McCaffrey, I'm like, well, he's a couple of years younger. He's in San Francisco. As long as he's healthy, he's a top 5 back. But I mean, he's got to be healthy for who knows how long. So it's at this point, it's hard for me to value both of them to figure out what I would accept in a trade to keep my window open, or is it time to do a quick reset? I already got a title. This can fund my
Did you win the league?
Yeah, I did win the league.
Oh, you mentioned that.
No, because
I see.
You were there watching me host the choice.
We haven't talked about that enough. Okay, you did win.
I did win. That was a great trade for Eckler, if I must say so myself, because it wasn't a first. I gave up 2 seconds and Terry McLaurin.
Yeah, you must have had a couple of friends giving you good advice to do that.
Yeah, some shadow GMs, if you will.
Closest I'll get to a ring. Assistant GM.
You can get on our boat.
There you go.
But I mean, it's hard because like I look at my team and I'm like, I feel like I have to compete. Look at my running backs. Look at Travis Kelce. But then like I look, I'm like, I don't know. My quarterback is Dak Prescott. My best receiver is a number 2 on his team, and T. Higgins.
Yeah, I think your team's at a point where I don't think it's even worth tearing it down. I think you ride this wave. I mean, they could certainly, things could go right and you could win 2 more championships, or at least, make 2 more playoff runs before it kind of starts to fall apart. But I keep mentioning what I like that you did. And this offseason, I forget the exact trade, but you traded for a future first, not even a 2024 first, a 2025 first. And that is a sound strategy because your team in its current state, it's really unlikely to think, unless for whatever reason that first you got was going to be Marvin Harrison Jr., to think that a rookie would come in and like seriously impact your team next year. Whereas in 2025, that's when you realistically are probably thinking like, oh man, McCaffrey might be tailing off, or Eckler could be tailing off, and having that insurance of 2 first-round picks in your pocket is just, you can already kind of see the end of the window, and then like there's your blast off point for the new window. And I love it. I think that was a great read by you. And you don't need the extra asset this coming year. Your team should be just fine the next couple of years with just your base picks. So I know, that was again one of those things like we all kind of talked about in a group. I was like, if you can get your hand on a couple of years out one, try to do that. And the other thing is people tend to trade future picks a little more easily than ones coming up in the next draft, because it's like, oh, that's a future me problem. All right. So Magic, you made a poll or a vote or whatever you want to call it, a list of questions last offseason. I think it'd be interesting to go through some of those now and see how we as a league felt. Everybody voted anonymously. So I don't know if you want to just kind of read through some of those questions, some of the results. What was the first topic we voted on?
So the first question was actually who had the best first year one draft? And,
I would guess I totally forget what I voted for, but I would guess that most people probably thought Costa. That we voted last year, right? So we'd already had 1 year in the books. Is that right?
this was immediately after our rookie draft, and we are now getting
immediately.
to the results 2 years later.
Oh, immediately after the rookie draft. Okay, then I don't think people appreciated what Costa did just then.
Yeah,
I'm trying to think. I think maybe you might have won that.
you would think, because I had the first pick, but I did not get the most votes. You actually got the most votes.
Me?
Yeah, so we had 10 people respond out of our 14-person league. So everything is going to be easily divisible, but you got 4 votes.
Wow.
I mean, I had 3, and Noah had 2. Flip had 1. That's the only 4 people who got votes.
I'm trying to remember what my team, even my first few picks were. I know I
3.
went Saquon.
I've got it. Barkley, CeeDee Lamb, Nuke, Cooper, James Robinson, Elijah Moore, Damian Harris, Zach Moss, Deshaun Watson, Ramondre.
Oh, that's a great pick.
Yeah.
Ramondre?
Yeah.
Yeah, I traded him. Okay, so I needed another regret. I was doing a DM with Nino 2 years ago. I had Ramondre and Damian Harris, and he had Dallas Goedert. I needed a tight end, and I was like, "Do you want one of my running backs?" He's like, "Yeah, send me whichever one of the Patriot running backs you want to." I'm getting ready to throw the ball around with Noah at the park, and Noah's like, "Oh, send him Ramondre. Damian is a starter." So my nephew screwed me. I'm just kidding, Noah. I make my own decisions, but he, that was, hearing somebody else say it sometimes is all you need to hear to push you over the hump.
Sure.
And and looking back, I certainly wish I had Ramondre Stevenson.
Your nephew also screwed me taking Anthony Richardson at pick 4.
Mm-hmm. He is not trading Richardson. He loves him. He's already gone to Colts training camp one time.
Oh
wow.
He's a reporter.
Mm-hmm.
So naturally, after best draft, we had a who had the worst draft.
Oh boy.
Gosh.
3 people got votes.
I wish I had the draft result in front of me.
So you can pull them up off the page. You've got to go to.
Let's do this as a league.
Okay.
There we go.
Yeah. So you pull up the league.
Uh-huh.
That's the wrong one.
It's a different league.
Oh,
there we go.
There.
Yeah. So you're gonna hit that the gear, and you're gonna go to previous leagues.
Oh, the year? Where is that at?
Gear. The gear.
This thing here?
Yep.
Oh, okay. I know that was called a gear. I always thought that was called the spinny little settings doohickey.
It's a little wordy.
Yeah, I thought so. All right, let me. I'm going to come back to StreamYard and see if you know what. I'm just going to take us off the screen for a second. So let's kind of do it this way because that's going to be some tiny writing, and then draft results. Boom. All right, perfect. Okay, so who had the worst draft? Let's see. I feel like people may not have liked what Vane did because both of his running backs were old.
It's not showing up on the screen here.
Oh, sorry about that. 1 second. I have 2 sleeper apps open, and like the genius that I am, I have it open in the wrong one. Come on. Am I in the right one? Previous leagues. Draft results. All right. I know what's happening here. 1 second. I don't know why I'm saying 1 second. Not like you guys are going anywhere. All right. Stop screen. Present screen. Share screen. There we go. Boom. All right. And I need to put it up on Sleeper. Good Lord.
It's late for you, huh?
There we go. Boom. You guys got it?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
All right. I would look at it as Vane with the two older running backs. I think Stokes maybe because of the fact that people did not like the Michael Thomas pick. And Fish taking Mahomes, I think, got more negativity than looking back on it. He probably should have. Those would be my three. Would be Stokes, Vane, and Fish.
Well, so I think the thing that happened with Fish is that he took another quarterback in round 8. So he took Mahomes and then he took Justin Fields. So that just didn't make a lot of sense. He didn't take any running backs until round 7. So that'd be my guess. Who ended up being the worst draft?
Yeah, and the running backs he got. That is a list, man.
Yeah,
Cam Akers, Chuba Hubbard, whoever K Hill is, and
David Johnson. Oh
David
man,
Johnson,
if this was
James
2007,
White?
he'd be in good shape.
Devin Booker, not Devin Booker. That's not right.
I was gonna make that joke.
That'd be amazing. What's the guy that backs up Saquon?
It's Devontae Booker.
Devontae Booker, and then his best running back was in round 16, Boston Scott. There's Todd Gurley. Why would he take Todd Gurley? Okay. Yeah, I think I'm with Stokes. I think that would be a fish vote.
So Fisher and Vane were tied at 4 votes each, and Costa got the remaining 2 votes.
Really? Let's take a look at what Costa did.
Okay.
I remember he stole Jamar Chase, and that's why I took Travis Kelce.
Yeah. I was not as high on Chase at that point in time. I remember thinking I would have taken Pitts had Pitts come back to me. And then I know whenever he got Waddle, that may have been like the first of my
Round 5.
I took no, never mind. I thought I took James Robinson over Waddle. I took Cooper over Waddle, which doesn't have to be terrible, I guess.
Cooper Kupp in round 4.
I took Cooper before Cooper Kupp. That's
how that turned out.
Mm-hmm. Look at Vane. Had no idea what he was sitting on here with Smith. And he follows it up with Melvin Gordon.
Myles Gaskin, no offense. No wonder people didn't like Vane's draft.
Yeah.
Jarvis Landry.
That's a team.
PPR king.
Who the hell is T. Wallace?
I don't even know.
All right, what other questions we got, Jick?
Who's going to win in year 1?
I would have guessed whatever team had the most stacked running backs. I would have guessed probably you.
I was a leading vote getter with 4.
Nice.
You were the second leading vote getter with 4.
Huh.
Bailey and Nino got 1 vote each.
Well,
so whoever
Nino
saw Nino
won.
Yeah, Nino won.
Yeah.
No one believed in him.
Nino, the biggest thing for Nino was Deebo Samuel like coming out of nowhere and becoming a superstar.
Yeah.
And then he got rid of Pollard, right?
I'm pretty
I don't know.
sure.
This sequence right here is going to be one that's interesting to track because Rodgers went to flip before I picked. I took Deshaun Watson, who was suspended for a year before Wilson, just gambling that Watson would come back. Nino took Wilson, which it's hard to get mad at, but he was just tailing off at that point. I think he was still a Seahawk at that point. And then RVD snags in with Jalen Hurts, which is just like found money right there. I mean, look, he's going to have one of the best 3 quarterbacks in the league in round 9, who's going to be there for the next 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
That's beautiful.
Did not seem like it at the time. I remember that.
No.
I was like, oh, you're just taking this guy. Okay, sure.
Yeah, RVD had a really interesting draft. Like a lot of the stuff he did made a lot of sense. It's just like Javonte Williams tearing his ACL.
After year 1, like we thought like that was a running back room to just be feared like for years and years. And like after last season, they just all crashed. I mean, not all. I mean, RVD couldn't have planned for any of that. But
yeah.
I tried to get all 4 of his top 4 running backs at some point. And ended up, I got none of them.
Yeah. Let's see
it's okay because I won the league, but
yeah. Did you?
Let's see what the best late pick was. Is there any late pick here that is just great? Nothing in the last round. Andy Isabella is now a Buffalo Bill. If that matters to anybody.
It doesn't.
Nothing here. Thanks, Chick.
Well,
No.
where did Amon-Ra go? I don't see where.
Noah has him. So where's nephew at? Nephew is right here. And he took him in round 9. That's a good pick. And he got James Conner in round 10. And Conner has been like super steady for him.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. St. Brown is in between Chuba Hubbard and Jalen Reagor. I mean, just think about those career arcs.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Round 9's a big round. Jalen Hurts.
Yeah.
Michael Gallup.
Hoping this Watson pick pays dividends for me. I'm not overly optimistic. Flip getting Evan Ingram in round 12 is pretty nice pull too. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you don't know. We don't know what to do with Deshaun Watson or what to expect with him this year. I mean, last year he did not look good at all. Like it didn't look great, and maybe that was just having a year and a half off football. But I don't know what to make of that. And
maybe something about his coaching staff rubbed him the wrong way.
Jeez.
Sorry.
Oh man.
I didn't mean to interrupt your joke there, or your actual thought there, Stokes. With my
no. I mean, Ramondre was taken in round 10, so that's turned out to be a very good pick in the end.
Yeah. Not that I'll see the benefit of that, but
right.
Yeah. Oh man. Okay, so let's go through any more interesting questions there, Jick, before we go through each roster here and kind of see what everybody's looking like.
Who will win year 3? Got the most varied responses. That's probably the last one here. 2, 3, 4, 5 people got votes. Nino and Noah both got 3 votes. I don't think Noah's going to win this year. We'll see.
At the time though, Noah having Lamar Jackson, Lamar could be fantastic. By the way,
yeah,
I don't even know if does he still have Lamar Jackson. But having Lamar Jackson, I don't know. And AJ Brown has been better than we thought.
He was really good.
So I don't know. I don't know what we saw, but
yeah, me neither. Who else was the one? Nino, who's already won. Costa got 2 votes.
Yeah,
I could see that. And then Josh got a vote and Fish got a vote. So just interesting variety there. That's probably the last kind of interesting question.
I found a good late round pick.
What's that?
Cordero Patterson, round 22.
Okay.
He was RB9 in year 1.
Yeah. He was a touchdown machine.
Yeah.
Because I know when Cordell Patterson came into the league, I told everybody this guy is going to be a red zone running back.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Okay.
All righty. Let's go to the league. Bear with me for a second as I reopen this stuff up here. And we're going to go through each team. And I'm probably going to just close out a sleeper because this has to be pretty or not close out a sleeper, close out of this, go back to us. All right. So what we're going to do next while I get this pulled up on my screen is we're going to go through each roster very quickly and just kind of give an outlook on each roster, what we think is going to happen. What did I do? What made you guys laugh? While he was in the middle of eating?
Yeah.
Classic Jick. Oh my gosh. All right. Team. You have 2 players no longer eligible for IR.
Cheater.
That's not my team. I need to go to a different year. How do I get back? You know what I'm going to do, guys? I'm going
refresh.
Yep, the big old F5. I'm going to drop an F5 on this thing.
Yeah.
There we go. Okay, we're going to go through each team. We're going to kind of give the outlook for these rosters, say what we like, what we don't like, what our strategy would be. Just quick little blurbs, whatever, and then wrap this thing up. So the first team that popped up was mine, which should not be a big surprise here. Let's get the presentation back on here real quick. Share. And then add you back to the stream. Let's see if we can get our faces back up here. People are missing our faces here. All right. So my team, I think like Stokes said, it really comes down to Deshaun Watson. I could tell early on last year that my team was destined to be stuck in the middle. So that's why I traded away Saquon Barkley and DeAndre Hopkins for Travis Etienne and DK Metcalf. Travis Etienne ended up being pretty good value. I took James Cook last year in the rookie draft over Garrett Wilson. That one's probably going to hurt. And then I have Treylon Burks, who hopefully does evolve into something, anything for me. But I traded up in this rookie draft to get Jahmyr Gibbs. I like my running back situation with these two and Cook, like my wide receiver situation. I think my issue is I don't think my team necessarily has any path to really being the best. And that's not where you want to be. I think my team can make the playoffs, maybe get some breaks and win a championship, but I don't necessarily, I mean, I could be wrong. Nobody ever knows, but I don't see like a league winning running back on my team. And that makes it tricky. So either one of you have any thoughts before we move on? I guess I'll just I'll kick it around. Stokes.
So I mean, I think that you have like all three of your starting running backs between ETN, Gibbs, and Cook. They all have that flash to where they can turn a small play into a long touchdown, and I think that that's important when you're dealing with a quarterback that his floor is probably really low. Potentially, but he's also has a history of being a top 5 fantasy quarterback. So you've got like this high variance with a lot of your players. But I mean, CD Lamb, like he's got like one of the highest floors when it comes to wide receivers because like Dak Prescott will just pepper him with targets and he gets all the slot play and all that. So I feel like you just got a lot of variance when it comes to those types of guys. And if they all you need is for 1 or 2 of them to hit per week, and then you're good to go.
I'm going to go to a different team. How do I navigate Sleeper? There we go. We're going to go with Chasing Pits and Ass. That's Costa's team. Okay. Magic will let you evaluate this one. We have Tua. I mean, this team is really good shape, assuming Tua is healthy. Tua, Jonathan Taylor, Aaron Jones, Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, Jordan Addison, Kyle Pitts, Brandon Cooks. He's got Kirk Cousins as a nice insurance policy in case Tua does get hurt. Charbonnet could be one of those running backs that if an injury happens to Kenneth Walker, he's in good shape. And he's got some decent backups in Claypool and Sutton, where if he loses a wide receiver, he could probably survive. A lot of it will come down, I think, to Cooks in Dallas. What kind of target share does he get behind CeeDee Lamb? And then how early Jordan Addison really takes shape. What do you think about this squad, Magic?
This is a really deep team. I mean, he's got Cortland Sutton on the bench. Like you said, Charbonnet. I mean, we've already seen the injury to Kenneth Walker here in August. And I mean, he's got the draft capital that you want out of a young running back. It's not like they took him in the 7th and you're hoping he hits like Isaiah Pacheco, who's once every 200 running backs. That 2 and Waddle stack last year was something else.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, aside from Jonathan Taylor, who is having contract disputes, and we'll see if he shows up. Until guys actually sit out, I assume they always are going to show up.
I do too.
So I think we have to assume that he's got to come into the season feeling like he's a favorite, barring multiple injuries.
I guess the one issue here would be that a Tua injury could actually impact 2 of his key players because it could also hurt Waddle. They have Mike White as a backup quarterback, but apparently he's doing really, really not so good in camp right now. And it looks like Costa has, for the most part, all of his draft picks, missing only a 2nd-round pick next year. So his team is in very good shape. We're going to keep it moving here.
Sorry, real quick. I think he's counting a lot on Kyle Pitts, no? And that hasn't really worked out yet.
Yeah. Does he has Njoku, who was okay last year. Albert O has really fizzled out after a hype a couple years ago. Yeah, he is. I think he probably will be okay with Njoku at backup tight end if Kyle Pitts has to miss part of the season. And then you also mentioned like some of the guys he has on his bench, whether it's Cortland Sutton or even Herbert could find himself into a lead role if an injury happens. So he could probably maneuver for a tight end. I don't think he'd get Kelsey or Kittle, but I think he can maybe get like a Dalton Schultz or something like that to kind of get through. But yeah, Kyle Pitts has been, I don't want to say disappointing, but we thought he was going to come in and set the world on fire. Had a very productive rookie year, not a lot of touchdowns, but I don't know that he's necessarily been like the fantasy game changer we expected him to be.
Mm-mm.
He was
No, he's not.
tight end 33 last year and 6 in our first year with his 1,000 yards and 1 touchdown in London.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's not like I don't know. I mean, we'll see. Maybe Desmond Ridder is going to be good now. He's had another offseason.
I very much believe in the player. I think
Yeah.
this is probably a situation where the lack of a quarterback, you really wish that Kyle Pitts could have lined up with Matt Ryan a little more, because Matt Ryan could spam some tight ends.
Yeah.
All right, Stokes, let's go on to the next one. We have Vane. Okay, so I'm going to scroll down here. Okay, so CJ Stroud is his best quarterback. You got
Oof.
Derrick Henry and Josh Jacobs. I like that, at least for a year. We'll see what happens with Jacobs with his franchise tag holdout. Chris Olave and Smith, you have to feel great about that. Marquise Brown, really the de facto number one in that Arizona offense. Don't really know who the quarterback is at this point in time, but Dulcich is kind of just a guy at tight end. Alan Lazard could get somewhat peppered with targets as the secondary option in the Jets offense. I don't hate this team, Stokes.
No, I don't hate it. I mean, and you have to hope that Kyler Murray can come back and be his quarterback and tap into whatever he had in the past. Although his targets aren't as good anymore. But yeah, when you look at the building block running backs for this season, and he's got building block wide receivers for this season and actual future seasons, it leaves a little bit to desire at a tight end and at that flex position. But like if you try to put in guys that could have big games here and there, that may work, and maybe Curtis Samuel can be that, because you have Bieniemy putting together whatever he's putting together for that team. So maybe that could be the guy that ends up playing more of the flex than Alan Lazard. But overall, I think that team has a lot to work with for sure.
This to me is one of those teams that I think screams trade your running backs now. And I say that because when you look at the foundation of his team, Olave and Smith should be there for the next 10 to 12 years. Hollywood Brown is not an old player. He should get Kyler Murray back at some point, or maybe CJ Stroud evolves into a stud. I certainly would not rule it out for him, but I don't know that Henry and Jacobs' timeline is going to line up when this team really starts humming. Unless Kyler Murray comes back earlier than expected this year, it feels like these guys could be really strong producers for a team that just doesn't have enough to get over the hump with what else is on this roster. If it were me and I were Vane, I would probably look to try to get rid of these running backs and get some assets that are either younger at running back or more future building block assets. But overall, yeah, that's a strong team. Lara had the first pick in the draft.
Sorry, can I chime in
go ahead.
real quick on
Oh,
Vane?
yeah,
He has 4 running backs on the team.
Henry, Jacobs.
One of them is Cordero Patterson. The other is Isaiah Spiller.
Yeah, that's not ideal.
So I think he should very strongly listen to your advice of trade your running backs, because if Jacobs doesn't show up, he's now starting one of those other 2. Or if one of them gets hurt, he's starting one of these other 2. That's too thin to be a real contender. But he's got guys who are, not guys, but Henry's closer to 30 and Jacobs is 25, 6, which is not old, but
I mean, for a running back, it's not young.
Yeah,
that's the issue. And then Jacobs could be on the way out of Vegas. Who knows where he goes after that? He does have a full boat of picks. That's good. But yeah, I think this is the kind of team where, you kind of maybe see how your season's going. If Stroud turns out to be, we've seen rookie quarterbacks come in and take over fantasy football. But like, if that's not the case for Stroud and you start off like 2-4, maybe you send Henry or Jacobs to a team like maybe Costa, who maybe Aaron Jones goes down or AJ Dillon starts getting more of a workload there, and Henry or Jacobs could put Costa's team over the top. Costa's not the kind of person that's going to overpay for a running back. Those Costa Vane trade negotiations would be amazing. All right, so Magic, you're up here with Lara, and he had the number 1 pick in the draft, traded Cortland Sutton to get it. That was obviously a very good move for him. Justin Herbert, Bijan Robinson, love that. Alvin Kamara, a little dicey, lot dicey. Love his wide receiver situation for future builds. Drake London, Calvin Ridley, and Quentin Johnston. And he also has Rachaad White, who should get a nice workload in Tampa. And then Darren Waller, I think, is going to be a top 5 tight end this year, just based on where I think his target share is going to be. If I remember correctly, looking at Laura's bench, though, that's where it kind of loses you. A-Chain could be something in Miami. I don't know that he'll ever be a high volume guy. After that, it looks like Lara had a bad team last year. He's done a really good job of rebuilding it with youth. I would say I don't know. Overall, I love where this team could be next year. And depending on what happens with Kamara's suspension, this team could be very dangerous this year. But I think this is a team that Lara, with all his picks, is in really good shape to contend with for a while. What do you think, Jake?
I think so too. You get Kamara out of that RB2 spot, put him in the flex. So if he's suspended, you can just swap him out with someone from the bench. I mean, it's not the deepest team, but I think in terms of starters, like for a team that had the number 1 pick last year, this is a really strong starting lineup. And it seems like it was really fast because he was really bad last year. I mean, he traded for the number 1 pick, but he had it. The number 2 pick was his own. So it's not like he just lucked into it. I mean, he had a bad team, and this may be a playoff team.
Yeah, I mean, Calvin Ridley. Having lost him for a whole year, you take a wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 1 type player and insert him right into there, and then Quentin Johnson, Bijan Robinson. It makes sense. Makes sense. Quick turnaround.
Darren Waller could be a number 1 target.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, every receiver he has now. Keenan Allen's still a thing, but every receiver he has a very good chance of being the number 1 target in their offense. Obviously, Quentin Johnson, that'd probably take a year or 2 to get there, but then you could actually have a Quentin Johnson Herbert stack. That's really nice. What are we laughing about? I feel left out.
Alex is in the background.
Oh, have her come. Your background's very blurry.
Yeah, blurred. Yes, because she's irresponsible.
Oh, okay. Tell me more.
Put your clothes on. Oh, you want to come tell them about Finger in the Watermelon?
All right, put your clothes on is all I needed to hear. We're taking down the screens for a second.
Do you want to come tell them about Finger in the Watermelon? Put your fingers in.
Just.
Oh, I was like, what the fuck are you doing?
All right,
we didn't know what he was talking about either. Offline, don't forget, Magic. People that are listening have no idea what you're talking about either.
Oh, it's
so
that you pick a good watermelon.
Finger in the watermelon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you put your fingers between the stripes on the watermelon.
Who reviewed the last team?
Jake.
Okay, good. So I wanted that to be the case because I want to hear Stokes have to say how good Nino's team is.
Oh boy.
So Nino has Russell Wilson, which obviously you're not feeling great about that, but his running back situation is Saquon Barkley and Ramondre Stevenson. His wide receiver situation is Devontae Adams, Deebo Samuel, and Terry McLaurin. Dalton Schultz, I think, could be a very underrated target hog in Houston because they just simply don't have anybody else to throw to. Miles Sanders, I guess, is going to be the best running back in Carolina, but what's that really going to amount to with a rookie quarterback? And then his depth situation, he's got Daniel Jones and Jared Goff. I mean, he's kind of quarterback heavy. So he's in really good shape. I would not expect Russell Wilson to be his primary quarterback at all. I think Jared Goff and Daniel Jones are more appealing options. That's good for him. And he has, A.J. Dillon, who could find his way to being an RB1 if things go right. Zach Moss could be sneaky value if Jonathan Taylor sits out and he comes back from that arm injury. Nuke and Juju on the bench along with Bateman. This is a good team. I mean, he won the championship 2 years ago, so it shouldn't be super surprising. A little bit of an age issue, I would say, with some of his key players, but overall, Stokes, I like this squad.
Yeah, it's a really good team, and then if you have Goff out there, like Goff put together a really good season with the Lions last year. So yeah, I'd be surprised if I think Russell Wilson he just has out there because he's just giving him the seniority of being a good quarterback with now Sean Payton. But yeah, when you look at the guys he has at the starting spots at each of those positions and the backups, like you can depend on, like, you don't know what DeAndre Hopkins is going to be. Like, there could be a situation where Nuke is that flex and not Miles Sanders, or it could be a situation where AJ Dillon takes over and is that flex. But I think that all those guys that he has out there starting makes sense to have them there right now. We have Miles Sanders, who got a pretty sizable deal for a running back, so Carolina is probably going to utilize him in a way that's going to make sense for the contract they gave him. So, I mean, this is a really good team. I don't like saying a lot of good things about Nino, but this roster construction is it's well done.
I don't know that I love any of the quarterback situations for these receivers, but the receivers are excellent. I think Nino certainly is a team that is going to be in the championship hunt. We're going to move on to Joey B and the boys. We have Joe Burrow, Nick Chubb, Kenneth Walker. Yeesh, this is a good team. Jefferson, Jerry Jeudy, Gabe Davis, Evan Ingram, and David Montgomery, who is probably going to play second fiddle, I would think, now in Detroit, but still be somewhat involved. He's back. He has Geno Smith as a backup quarterback to Burrow. I like that. And outside of that, I don't see a whole lot. Evan Hall is somebody that, depending on what happens with Jonathan Taylor, could find himself in a good situation. Same thing for Evans, honestly. So, I think there's at least intriguing depth here. I wouldn't call it good depth outside of Geno Smith. But man, Jefferson, Jerry Jeudy, and I still think Gabe Davis has a chance to have a really big year for Buffalo in a contract year. And then the running back situation with Chubb and Walker. I feel like I've been saying this a lot, Jick, but another team I like.
The really good thing about this team, he's got Chubb. He has Kareem Hunt. Okay, that doesn't matter. But he's also got Jerome Ford. So he's locked down on that Cleveland backfield. Which
he's got current and former Browns. He's great strategy.
So I mean, this is another strong team. I mean, this is a strong team, and we're 14. We're a 14-team league with I don't know, what do we have? 30 people rosters right now.
Yeah.
I mean, you see a strong team, and it's like, wow, how they get so many good people.
Yeah.
No one's going to be perfect everywhere because it's a deep league. But he tried to go for it last year, and unfortunately, he played me, and everyone who played me lost. So it's not his fault. Again, like Stokes. So Kendall Walker comes back. And they're young. No one here that he's really counting on is old.
I think Judy's going to have a monster year. I think he's going to have a lot of those Michael Thomas targets in that Sean Payton offense. So I think this is a solid team. You could have the best wide receiver in fantasy and the best running back in fantasy. That certainly is within his range of outcomes. Let's move on. We already did my team. We're going to move on to Bailey. I feel like we're going to get to a point where we're going to see teams we don't like. That just would make sense. I hope not, though, because at some point, that means that nobody's really falling apart. All right, Bailey has Trevor Lawrence, Joe Mixon, and Pierce. Christian Watson, Mike Evans, Mike Williams, TJ Hawkinson, and Christian Kirk. And then on the bench, we have Brock Purdy, like that. Brown for the Bengals, decent. I think he has a chance to maybe evolve into something. Outside of that, I don't see a ton. George Pickens, that could be something. That could really be something. So Stokes, I don't think this is a powerhouse team. I have my questions of whether Pierce is going to have the same volume when they did pay decent money to bring in Devin Singletary. And, I don't know. I think Joe Mixon is in a better situation than he is a player, but all it takes is a good situation. And when I look at his wide receivers, I think they're all kind of in that wide receiver 2 conversation. I don't see, maybe Christian Watson elevates to wide receiver 1, but I don't see anybody that you just is going to win the league for you. And maybe the same thing with Trevor Lawrence. I think he's kind of a low-end QB1 instead of a high-end QB1. So maybe this is the first team that I look at and I'm like, this team is not like set up for immediate success, but it's not like if this team wins, I would be stunned.
Yeah, I think he's got a bunch of pretty good players. Like these guys that they're all like must starts and in the position of 1 or 2, but there's none of those guys that, hey, this is top end talent. But I think it's enough pretty good players that you can look at the end of the week and it amounted to 120 points, and you're like, huh, they got 120 with this roster. Okay, how'd that happen? And I just think it's a bunch of pretty good players. Like you mentioned George Pickens. I think that he's got a lot of potential with Kenny Pickett if he gets enough of those jump balls and things of that nature, he could be the guy that unseats Christian Kirk. But Christian Kirk had a pretty good year with Trevor Lawrence. But how does that mesh with Calvin Ridley coming back and Evan Ingram already being there? So there's enough question marks with each of these players that you can poke holes in it. But if they're in the 10 to 20 range at the end of the year, it shouldn't be a surprise.
All right, let's talk about Fish. we have Pat Mahomes, Tony Pollard, Cam Akers, Chris Godwin, Kadarius Toney, Romeo Doubs, Mark Andrews, and Antonio Gibson. And then on his bench, we don't really have much in the way of backup quarterbacks. Boston Scott is there as a backup running back. I do like Miller for the Saints. That could end up being something in a couple years. Renfro, Robinson, I think, is going to get phased out. I like Josh Downs quite a bit, but I don't know that he's going to necessarily have impact year one. I don't love this team. I think the receivers leave a lot to be desired. I'm not the biggest Gibson fan. It feels like he's playing second fiddle now in Washington. Patrick Mahomes is maybe the best quarterback in fantasy. If not, he's in the top three. I feel like Cam Akers just hasn't been the same guy since his injury. This one to me, Magic, looks like if I were Fish, I would be trying to find ways to sell off parts for future assets. I think this team is good enough to keep him in the middle, and that's not where you want to be.
Yeah, I mean, he's got Mahomes, who, like you said, could be top 3 at his position. Tony Pollard, we saw him just have a really good year. Chris Godwin has been good, but now he's going to get Kyle Trask, Baker Mayfield.
Yeah.
Kadarius Toney. I mean, just because you trade a first for him doesn't make him a good player. Romeo Doubs, we don't know. There are some pieces here where it's like, yeah, I could be a contender, but I mean, I don't know. This is the third year of Antonio Gibson is going to catch passes. I mean, sure, let's see. I don't know. I think he's going to blow some people out certain weeks and then just get absolutely crushed some other weeks, and it's going to amount to I think nothing. But
well, he's got 2 first round picks. He got T-Mags. That's good. So maybe he's already got his eye on the future. I would certainly embrace that. I would look at someone like a Chris Godwin for sure. Maybe Cam Akers, if he gets off to a strong start, trade him. I'd be looking to trade off some of these pieces, maybe even a Mark Andrews, because I do like Tony Pollard, but Tony Pollard is, I hate to say it like this, but sneaky old, just because, you're back up for so many years and you're thinking, oh, Tony Pollard's what, 22, 23. I think he's 25 or 26. So I think Fish probably needs to be trying to look to send some of these guys away. Would not send away Mahomes unless you get a king's ransom. But yeah, there's stuff to work with here, but I think his head's in the right spot if he's got 2 firsts already. Move on to RVD and Stokes, your old nemesis from Madden, has Jalen Hurts. We talked about that incredible value he got in the initial startup draft. Najee Harris and Isaiah Pacheco, that could be very decent. Garrett Wilson was outstanding last year. Tyler Lockett continues to be criminally underrated in fantasy football. All he does is produce. Brandon Ayuk is a very solid player for San Francisco. And then he has the touchdown machine, Jamal Williams, and then Sam Laporta. I like that tight end a lot. Not sure if you're going to get a lot out of a rookie tight end. See what he's got going on his bench situation. Oh, he has Williams from Denver. That could be a huge boost if he comes back strong. And it doesn't look like he has a whole lot in the wide receiver. Jalen Hyatt. I love me some Jalen Hyatt. I think that could be a huge get for him. Obviously a big John Mechie fan just because, his situation and coming back from his battle with cancer. But yeah, I think this is a really solid team from RBD. To me, Stokes, this really comes down to his running backs. If his running backs play at their ceiling, his team's going to be a pain in the ass.
Yeah, and I mean he keeps getting really good value at running back. So I mean we talked about Harris, Williams, and Swift, and then he has Isaiah Pacheco, and then he has Jamal Williams. Like you have a bunch of these guys that he's just landing, and he also has at wide receiver. You mentioned Jalen Hyatt. He also has John Dotson, so that a previous first round pick for Washington, and so he's got a lot of potential with these guys, and if he gets a bunch of health at running back, he shouldn't have any issue with trading, whether it's Pacheco or Swift or Javonte, if any of those guys. And if he ends up with a gluttony of them, he can easily get them dealt if he wants to upgrade at wide receiver. But if Garrett Wilson is anything like Aaron Rodgers says he's going to be, Garrett Wilson's going to be a guy that's going to be easy wide receiver 1 territory. So he might. I'd probably try to upgrade tight end just because you don't know for sure with Sam Laporta, but like in the Detroit offense, like, these guys produce good players where they have last year. So like it's a really good team, and Jalen Hurts, like as far as floors go, aside from Josh Allen, he's probably the highest floor quarterback, just because of the things he can do running the ball. So I guess Mahomes is in there too, but yeah, I really like this team too.
Swift kicking the Hurts. Good name too.
That's right. Yeah.
All right, Stokes, your team. So Magic and I are going to pick this team apart. All right, Madison. When did you get Madison? Did you send that trade to the nephew last year?
I traded Clyde Edwards-Helaire and my first for 2024 for Keenan Allen and Alexander Madison.
Okay. So Josh Allen, the best quarterback in the history of football.
That's right.
Alexander Madison, Devin Singletary, who's going to be probably 1B in Houston. I mean, Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, and Keenan Allen. Hello. George Kittle at tight end. Love that. Michael Thomas, it sounds like he's back in the running this year, is actually playing in the NFL. Obviously, it's hard to know what your team's going to look like right now when Dalvin Cook and Ezekiel Elliott are both out of jobs, but you assume they're both going to land somewhere. And, at least in the case of Dalvin Cook, should be very, very involved. So I expect that maybe one of them will supplant Singletary in your lineup. And then I like Sky Moore. I think he has a chance to evolve into something. Odell Beckham, who knows what you get there. I'm not overly optimistic about him, but you just never know. And, Taysom Hill having that tight end eligibility could always be interesting if he decides to play quarterback. I know it's Magic's turn, but just in general, kind of give us the state of the team, Stokes.
I'm just hoping that Dalvin Cook lands somewhere where he can be starter type. I keep too much track of Ezekiel Elliott. I think the Cowboys have been talking about bringing him back, and if that's the case, I'll be happy with that because he'll be their goal line back. And I played him last year in a touchdown or bust situation. I needed him to get just 8 9 points, and he did that pretty well. But this team is built off of Josh Allen and the wide receivers. So I mean, I all those wide receivers, they have the potential to be slate breakers, to use a DFS term. Like with Tyreek Hill and Keenan Allen, he can be a PPR monster, and of course Diggs. So yeah, it's really built around Josh Allen and the wide receivers, and Kittle, of course.
Yeah, with your quarterback, obviously, and then with your receivers and tight end, you don't necessarily need your running backs to be the reason why your team wins. They just can't be the reason why your team loses. I think there's some volatility at your running back situation right now. It's just going to depend on what happens with Dalvin Cook. How does Alexander Madison handle the full-time RB1 duties? Does he get that role? But yeah, I think your team has a real shot here. And then what's your draft pick situation looking like? You don't have a first next year either?
Nope, sure don't.
What happened?
Well,
that was the Madison trade, right?
Yeah, that was for Madison.
Yeah, you already said that. Yeah, me not listening. Classic
me.
me.
I have Velus Jones. He's a 26-year-old second-year player.
Well, anytime you can get excited about taking a 25-year-old rookie, you just got to do it. Yeah. All right, Magic. We'll go back to you here because we already hit the hour mark here.
I understand.
We have Flip's team. A lot of Jets. Aaron Rodgers, Breece Hall, Brian Robinson, Cooper Kupp, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Zay Flowers, Dalton Kincaid. Hello, rookies. Pat Freiermuth at his flex. Evan McPherson. I want to see what's going on with his bench here. Roshan Johnson. Did Flip have every stinking rookie draft pick? And then I actually kind of like this one here. Zamir White, I think, is the guy that could absolutely benefit if Josh Jacobs stays away for a while. Zay Jones, DJ Chark, those guys are somewhat interesting. Isaiah Hodgins is a guy that can put up some numbers for you. I like Flip's bench, but in general, I know Flip had said that he took one look at his team last year and was like, I got to get younger and I got to get better. And at least looking at it now, Magic with the best rookie tight end and two of the best rookie receivers, it seems like he's accomplished that.
Oh yeah, he's a quick turnaround, which you can do when you have a lot of picks. Do you think he might be a fake contender?
What do you mean?
Or So he's kind of on Aaron Rodgers, who we
Mhm.
kind of saw bottom fall out last year. And before Matt LaFleur got there, he had been down already.
Yeah.
So it could be that he was a system guy, and then I don't know, he just got old eventually. Brees Hall's currently on the PUP.
Mm-hmm.
Brian Robinson, he's fine. I mean, he's not really a pass catcher, so you don't have necessarily the running back upside that you typically get. Cooper Kupp, when he's healthy, he's amazing. But I mean, he was hurt last year. He limped off with a hamstring this week. Matt Stafford, if he's not there, they don't have a quarterback in LA. So he's got these, and then after that, it's a glut of young players that should keep him relevant for however long the league goes. So is he a fake contender, or is he not even a contender? Is he just if I make the playoffs, great? Because then you go down to his draft picks, and he's got a first, a second, a second, a second.
Mm-hmm. I just noticed that.
Year. So it's like, is he even a contender this year? Is he like, if I do well this year, cool. If not, who cares? I'm set forever.
I haven't talked to him about this, but I would think that he's looking at 2024 as his season to really make a run at it. Brees Hall would be a year off of his ACL. And then, I would assume, if this year goes wrong, he'd have a bad pick, which is actually a good pick. You have Jackson Smith and Jigba and Zay Flowers and Dalton Kincaid all going into their second year where they could all be the top target getters in their offense. If not, they're at least in the top two. Maybe he tries to spin. If Cooper Kupp has a good first few weeks of the season, first month, maybe flips him for something younger and better for the future. And it's hard to not like his tight end situation. I mean, I don't know if you want both of these guys, but it feels like Kincaid and Freiermuth are those guys that could each be like top 5 tight ends, for the next 10 years, like if they hit their ceiling. I'm with you on Rodgers. Rodgers doesn't do much to excite me at all as far as fantasy goes. I think he's kind of somebody that you hope gets you on a good week is going to get you 2 touchdowns and maybe sniff close to 300 yards. But I think most weeks you're looking at like 200, 250, a touchdown or two, and just doesn't lose you the league. I also saw Marvin.
Other than Rodgers.
You got Zach Wilson.
Yeah, like I said, he's got no quarterbacks other than Rodgers. So like, what's the plan here?
Mike White.
I think the plan here is stay the course. Maybe take your medicine this year and giddy up next year. Put in Marvin. What about if this team right here has Marvin Harrison Jr. instead of Cooper Kupp? That team would be nice.
Yeah.
It'd be nice to have first round picks.
Yeah.
Must be.
Pennies on the dollar. Magic's team.
Oh, that's me.
Dak Prescott, Christian McCaffrey, Austin Eckler, T. Higgins, Michael Pittman. That is Deontay Johnson, Travis Kelce, and Rashad Penny, who may actually be like sneaky, really good value this year because sounds like he's getting the first team reps in Philadelphia. Carr is a very solid backup for you. Brissett still in the running for the starting quarterback job there. Love's going to be a starting quarterback, so you're in good shape there. Like Jacoby Myers in Vegas, he should be the second target getter there. Peoples Jones is just kind of a guy. Deontay Hardy, just kind of a guy. But yeah, I mean, your team, anytime you can roll out there with CMC, Eckler, and Travis Kelce, I think your team has a real shot to win the title.
Well, it's funny you should say that because we just won the title.
Oh my god!
Did you really?
It's amazing. I know, just things broke right. I mean, I had a monster team all year, and I really probably only should have lost one game the whole season. But I mean, it's amazing that things just broke right.
When you have 3 players that give you the value of their position and another position, that puts you at such a great advantage. Like with CMC, he gives you running back and wide receiver. Like Travis Kelce, he gives you wide receiver production because that's actually how he's used, and same with Eckler. So I mean, it gives him such an advantage that having guys that can go a game with getting 2 or 3 targets like T. Higgins, Michael Pitt, but they can go a game and be invisible potentially, and it doesn't even phase the team because he's got those guys that are going to give you such high level production that it just doesn't fall on the radar. So like having that trio as a building block, it just puts him so far ahead of most of the people that he ends up facing, and it just, obviously it has proved dividends.
What's interesting about your pass catchers is they're all good. T. Higgins is going to be a very high-end receiver, even though he's the second target on his team. Michael Pittman, for whatever reason, feels like he's been disappointing, but then you look at his stats and you're like, he's been really good. Kind of the same thing for Deontay Johnson. I really like your receivers. And man, if Rashad Penny can take over that early down role in Philadelphia with as much as they run the ball, you're in really good shape there. Let's go on to the nephew here. We have Lamar Jackson, James Conner, Algier from Atlanta, AJ Brown, St. Brown, Alec Pierce, Cole Kmet, Jeff Wilson, Brandon McManus, Anthony Richardson, backup quarterback. Tajay Spears, I like that. Michael Carter could get some run early in the season if Breece Hall is out. I think Gesicki's going to kind of have a little bit of a revival in New England. They're going to run a little bit of 2 tight end sets there. He got his hooker and Hendon Hooker. Didn't know he was even injured. And then he has 2 first-round picks coming up. We already talked about that. So I don't look at this team, guys, and maybe Stokes on this one, as a team that's really going to compete this year. Now, Lamar Jackson is an absolute wild card in a lot of ways, similar to Magic's team, not necessarily with the running backs, but just guys that can absolutely break the slate. Lamar, AJ Brown, and St. Brown kind of all have that ability, maybe to lesser extents than CMC and Eckler. But Lamar, at his very tippy top before the last couple of years of regression, was just, you could not make his price high enough on DraftKings with as much as he was running and throwing. If we get back to that, nobody's going to want to see this team. But I look at Noah's team here. I think he's got to figure out his long-term RB2 situation. He's probably got to find another wide receiver unless Alec Pierce evolves into something. Obviously needs to figure out a better answer than Jeff Wilson. And, his 2 best assets might end up actually being Anthony Richardson and Lamar Jackson, like having 2 quarterbacks that could conceivably be in the top 5 at the end of the year if you factor in rushing yards. So I don't know. Overall, Stokes, I think nephew is down on his team, but I see quite a bit to work with here.
Yeah. So what I'm foreseeing is like partway through the season, if Lamar is Lamar, he'll end up trying to move him because, like, as you said, he loves Anthony Richardson. So I think that, being a fan of the team and loving the Colts so much, like he's not gonna want to have to make the decision to sit Lamar Jackson when Lamar Jackson is being Lamar Jackson in order to play Anthony Richardson. So I feel like he's gonna end up trading Lamar because it's not a smart decision to sit Lamar. So it's a better decision to try and trade him and get maybe an RB2 that either is currently or will be an RB2 in the future, or go for a draft selection. But it's trying to trade quarterbacks is a tough thing because most people have a quarterback they either believe in or that's already good. So it's like, trying to trade for quarterbacks in Madden. It's like most people already have their answer at quarterback, and there's not a lot of them that are really old. So I still think there'd be value in trading Lamar Jackson, but it's just finding the right position. But as of the rest of the roster, like Amon-Ra and AJ Brown, those are really good spots. Alec Pierce, that's obviously he loves the Colts, so it is what it is. But that RB2 situation is definitely glaring. And for what it's worth, James Conner isn't a young running back, so that may end up being a position that he's going to, like, running back in general is something that he's going to have to address with those 2 first-round picks that he has.
Yeah, it feels like whatever he ends up doing with Lamar Jackson needs to be a gateway to him getting a better running back situation. If he can pull that off, then he'll be in good shape. And it's a shame that Algier ended up being Bijan Robinson's backup, because last year he looked like he had something in Algier. It just so happened that they decided to take the best running back we've seen in about 10 years. All right. It feels so good. This is JD. Oh boy. Okay. Justin Fields. Is this Chris Evans? What's the guy's name?
Yeah, it's Chris.
Chris Evans. Chris Evans, backup running back for the Bengals. Rookie J.K. Dobbins, DJ Moore, Jonathan Mingo, Rashee Rice, Dawson Knox, McCole Hardman, and Marvin Harrison Jr.
Marvin
Dun,
Harrison
dun,
Jr.
yeah, I'm just predicting. Let's.
Oh, I had to make sure he had his first this year. Hold on.
Yeah, he better have his first.
He does.
All right. So look, this team is not ideal. It's not terrible though. Like I was expecting it to be worse when I looked at it. J.K. Dobbins could still end up being a very good fantasy player. And then Evans is somebody that he landed into a great offense with a running back who's getting really old, who's on basically a 1-year deal. That could turn out to be a diamond in the rough. I like Mingo. I like Rice. I don't know how much you can count on them year one, but I think JD's in a position maybe even more so than Flip, where I think you have to almost trust the process here. It's not about what you win in 2023. This team, as constructed with Rice and Mingo, and a bunch of young guys, they're not going to win the championship this year. So it's all about setting your eyes on the future. Can you, if J.K. Dobbins comes back and looks good early in the year, can you flip him for a first-round pick next year? You have the DJ Moore, Justin Fields stack. That could be something. Dawson Knox. If Dawson Knox gets in the end zone maybe 3 or 4 times in the first month of the season, could you flip him for something interesting? Just knowing what's coming behind Dawson Knox in the coming years that might ultimately phase him out of Buffalo. Maybe Desmond Ridder starts off hot and you find something there. But in general, this is the kind of team where I think if you're JD, you always got to have your eye on the future. Who's going to be important to me in 2025? Is Dawson Knox going to matter on my team in 2025? If not, I need to trade him because that's where his eyes need to be. Because this happens, it's dynasty, but Stokes, this to me is a team that looks a couple years away.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I would probably I would be in this position where I'm hoping some of these players that are established players have a good couple weeks. We've seen more than enough people trade for running backs in season because they feel like their window is here and they're going to go for it. So yeah, I'd be hoping that J.K. Dobbins is good, or whatever, if something were to happen to Joe Mixon. Then Chris Evans, you can try to capitalize off of that. But like all these younger guys, I mean, you just don't know what you're going to have in them, and I don't think this team is close. And I mean, I think what could happen potentially for him is that Justin Fields can like carry those guys to like 4 wins and out of the number 1 pick potentially, because Justin Fields, like he can put a 40 point game with ease. So like so it could be one of those situations where his team is actually the worst team, but just because like you have a really really good fantasy commodity with a high ceiling, that it could pull you out of the depths just because he's just really good.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't see much on Zach Kuntz as interesting player, I suppose. But yeah, this is a team I could easily see Mingo and Rice being very important to his team as early as next year. Rice could be the number 1 receiver in Kansas City and probably number 2 target as early as next year. There's no reason to not think that. And then Mingo is the guy they drafted right after taking Bryce Young in Carolina. And it's not like that they're just flushed with talent at wide receiver. He could certainly end up being the number 1 by next year. So yeah, I think this is one of those, you stay the course. Justin Fields should be an excellent building block. Or maybe Justin Fields gets enough value early in the year, you can trade him off and just reshape your entire team if somebody's willing to sell the farm for a quarterback. But the thing about dynasty is, and I'll leave you kind of all with this, is you either want to be competing for a championship or competing for the last spot. The worst place to be in dynasty is stuck in the middle, because you don't have those premium rookies coming to your team, and then you also don't have a chance to compete for a championship. So as bad as it looks right now for JD is going to have potentially a top 3 pick next year. And that is a great place to be in dynasty. Those picks you can sell for a ransom, or you can add a playmaker to your team as long as you draft well. And we'll see what happens. But hey, guys, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
I'm just excited for the season. I'm excited for football. It's a really good feeling to know that if I want, I'll have Josh Allen for the rest of his career, and that's one of the cool things about Dynasty is you don't lose these players unless you want to lose them, and that was one of the biggest things that came to mind when trading for Josh Allen was knowing, hey, like for the rest of his career, every snap that he takes for the rest of his Bills career, I have a vested interest in.
He's doing it for you. All right, champ.
Correct.
Final thoughts will come from you. Any final thoughts tonight?
Oh, this was fun. We should do another one, maybe halfway through the season, do like a season catch up or something like that. See how our predictions are going for who we think had a bad roster. And if
How
we
about
might
after
take some
every week?
advice.
AFL Dynasty Advance.
Yeah, every Tuesday.
Maybe. We'll see. All right, guys. Let me get the pointing down. For Stokes, for Magic, this is Josh. I will obviously be posting the link in Sleeper. I'm assuming this is going to be on the old AFL Madden YouTube, which I think now is just called Josh McCarty. I hope you guys enjoy this. Let us know. And yeah, we'll talk to you all soon. Later.
Peace.